Ann Britland's chilling crimes shatter the facade of respectable Victorian England, revealing a terrifying reality beneath. How did a seemingly ordinary woman transform into a cold-blooded poisoner who killed for greed and control? What dark motives lurked behind her acts, and how did the truth finally surface? In this story, we unveil the horrifying details of her deadly deception and the grim fate that followed. Born into the grim realities of mid-19th century England, Ann Britland's early years offered little promise of the sinister legacy she would eventually leave behind. The daughter of working-class parents, Ann grew up in an environment marked by stark economic hardship and limited prospects for social mobility. Victorian society, rigid and unforgiving, shaped the lives of many women like Ann, confining them to traditional roles with little room for independence or personal ambition. Yet beneath the veneer of a modest upbringing, something darker would take root. Her youth was marked by the typical struggles of the era, but also hints of the manipulative and secretive personality that would later define her. Ann's first marriage introduced her to the realities of domestic life, but it was the death of her first husband that cast the first shadow of suspicion. Although his demise was officially attributed to natural causes, rumors whispered in the small Lancashire community began to swirl whispers that Ann's hands might have been less than innocent. Widowed but undeterred, Ann soon remarried, this time to George Britland, a respectable grocer whose business served the local community. George's presence offered Ann an opportunity to establish herself within the fabric of social respectability. She assumed the roles expected of a grocer's wife, managing household affairs, assisting in the shop, and maintaining a facade of conventional domesticity. Neighbors regarded her as diligent, perhaps somewhat stern, but fundamentally unremarkable. Yet the quiet rhythms of daily life concealed a sinister undercurrent. Unbeknownst to George and the wider community, Ann was concealing a secret predilection for a deadly tool she would use not only to exert control, but ultimately to eliminate those who stood in her way or who she believed were hindrances to her desires. Poison, especially arsenic, was not an uncommon instrument in Victorian crime, favored for its subtlety and deadly efficiency. One chilling aspect that sets Ann apart from many other poisoners of her time was the calculated nature of her kills. Unlike those who derangedly resorted to violence, Ann's murders were clinical, deliberate, and motivated by cold calculation, financial gain, and a twisted need for control over life and death within her immediate circle. The first victim after her second marriage was her own infant daughter, whose sudden and unexplained death devastated Ann and George. Grief-stricken neighbors expressed sympathy, but underneath lurked the first seeds of doubt. Soon after, further deaths and mysterious illnesses began to afflict those closest to the Britland family, raising more questions than answers. Was Ann merely an unfortunate woman stricken by tragedy, or was there a more nefarious explanation hidden beneath the surface? Ann's ability to maintain her composure, present herself as a grieving mother and dutiful wife, confounded those around her. It was precisely this duplicity that allowed her to continue her deadly spree unchecked for so long. How could someone so seemingly ordinary harbor such malevolence? In this first part of the story, we peel back the layers of Ann's early life and entry into the world of crime. We begin to see how a woman underestimated by society could harness poison as a weapon of calculated horror, setting in motion a chain of events that would shock Victorian England. But what truly drove Ann to become a murderer? What was the dark secret she tried so desperately to conceal? These questions beg answers as the grim narrative unfolds. If this tale of deception and horror has gripped you, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that unearth the past's darkest secrets. What do you think could push someone like Ann to betray her own family so horrifically? Share your thoughts below before we continue to unravel her deadly saga. As the shadows lengthened around Ann Britland's life, the insidious string of deaths that surrounded her began to attract attention. The first two tragediest, loss of her infant daughter and the subsequent mysterious death of a close family member, were initially mourned with the customary solemnity expected in a close-knit Victorian community. However, suspicion slowly grew like an unwelcome specter, fed by whispered rumors and the peculiar circumstances that accompanied each demise. The second victim, Mary Ann's mother-in-law, fell ill suddenly and with symptoms that perplexed local medical observers. Her condition deteriorated rapidly, featuring severe stomach pains, vomiting, and a wasting away of strength, such that she passed away within a matter of days. While medical knowledge was limited and often inaccurate, some practitioners began to suspect the presence of poison. Arsenic, a favorite poison in Victorian crime, was notoriously hard to detect, but notorious nonetheless for its distinctive and insidious effects. Emerging scientific developments in toxicology had begun to equip physicians and legal authorities with tools to detect such deadly substances. But these methods were still in their infancy. The grim potential for murder by stealth was becoming a subject of public fascination and deeply feared by many. In this climate, the deaths associated with the Britland household set nerves on edge. Despite increasing unease, Mary Ann maintained her facade of the grieving and dutiful wife. Her careful control over the narrative-ined the frequent illnesses that affected other members of George Britland's extended family and acquaintance heightened suspicions, but could not yet be proved. It was a testament to the pervasive trust in genteel appearances and the limitations of contemporary forensic science that Mary Ann's actions went unnoticed for so long. The pattern, however, grew clearer with the death of George's uncle, a man known for his simple and honest life, who succumbed after a brief illness marked by the same haunting symptoms. These recurring fatalities were initially chalked up to an unfortunate series of natural diseases common in working-class populations, such as cholera or typhoid. However, the uncanny resemblance in symptoms soon became too remarkable to ignore. Adding to the tension was Mary Ann's increasingly erratic behavior. Neighbors who once regarded her with mild curiosity now watched her with suspicion. Reports circulated of petty quarrels within the family, and a palpable strain in Mary Ann's marriage began to surface. Financial difficulties, often masked by appearances in the grocery business, became harder to conceal. Was murder a desperate attempt to relieve monetary burdens or a pathological addiction to control? George Britland himself, at the time, was reportedly unaware or reluctant to acknowledge the ominous pattern enveloping his household. His trust in Mary Ann, as well as the social stigma that would accompany accusations of spousal murder, likely clouded his judgment. The delicate social fabric of Victorian England often deterred open talk about domestic strife, let alone criminal suspicion within the family. Despite the unease and mounting rumors, Mary Ann's sinister secret was safe for the time being. But the inexorable march toward exposure had begun with unprecedented forensic advances and a growing willingness among Victorian authorities to investigate suspicious deaths. This would ultimately set the stage for the dramatic unmasking of a poisoner disguised as a model wife and mother. In this second chapter, the tension escalates as multiple suspicious deaths deepen the mystery and fear surrounding Mary Ann Britland. The stakes rise. How long could she keep her deadly secret from authorities and the community? What vital mistake would lead to her undoing? The answers lie ahead as this dark tale tightens its grip. Stay tuned to uncover how forensic breakthroughs and growing suspicions finally threatened Mary Ann's reign of terror. And if you find this tangled web of deceit gripping your attention, make sure to subscribe for more tales from history's darkest chapters. By the mid-1880s, the string of deaths surrounding Mary Ann Britland and her family had garnered the attention of local authorities, though direct threats of legal consequences had not yet materialized. The Victorian era's criminal justice system was a complex maze, suffering from rudimentary forensic techniques and social prejudices that often hampered investigations speedily those involving female perpetrators from the working class. Yet the persistence of reoccurring mysterious fatalities finally propelled the case into the public eye, summoning a new wave of inquiry and suspicion. The decisive turning point came with the death of one of George Britland's close relatives, whose demise bore the now unmistakable hallmarks of arsenic poisoning. This latest death upset the fragile balance of secrecy. Mary Ann had maintained and forced a cautious but determined investigation by medical professionals and police. What had previously been dismissed as unfortunate coincidence could no longer be ignored. With advances in toxicology gaining traction most, notably due to the work of pioneering scientists who developed chemical tests for arsenic authorities, began exhuming the bodies of the deceased to whom conduct detailed post-mortem examinations. This was a dramatic and unprecedented move in a small Lancashire town, carrying a profound implication: the possibility of a serial poisoner living among them. It struck a collective nerve. Simultaneously, the community's suspicion toward Mary Ann hardened into accusatory whispers. Her once placid demeanor was now shadowed by nervousness and unease. Close acquaintances started to report her seeming coldness and detachment, contrasting starkly with her public persona of an efficient housekeeper and dutiful wife. Some recalled her oddly interested behavior around the timing of the illnesses. In the course of the forensic examinations, deadly levels of arsenic were discovered in the exhumed bodies, providing chilling confirmation that these deaths were not due to natural causes. The coroner's report, grounded in these scientific findings, transformed mere suspicion into hard evidence capable of supporting criminal charges. Victorian England, with all its social and legal intricacies, now faced the grim reality of a woman who had methodically administered poison to murder family members close to her. Mary Ann was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder, a rare and shocking case at the time due to the gender of the accused and the nature of the crimes. Her trial became a sensation, capturing wide attention in newspapers and community gossip alike, exposing the intersection of class, gender, and crime in a deeply conservative society struggling to comprehend how a housewife could orchestrate such horrors. Throughout the investigation and the lead-up to the trial, Mary Ann's motives and psychological state became the subject of intense speculation. Did she act solely from a lust for money, orchestrating her victims' deaths to claim inheritance and relief from financial pressure? Or was there a darker psychological compulsion at work, an urge to wield power through poison, cloaked in domestic normality? The trial proceedings would ultimately crack open these questions, peeling back the layers of Mary Ann's character and revealing the cold, calculated mind behind the murders. But before justice could be fully served, the public was left in suspense, struggling with the horrifying truth that evil could wear such an unassuming face. As closes, the stage is set, a small English town gripped by horror, a community on edge, and a woman poised for judgment. What fate awaited Mary Ann Britland? Would the evidence be enough to seal her gruesome legacy? The answers are imminent, but the darkest revelations are yet to come. The trial of Mary Ann Britland in the late 1800s was a gripping and unprecedented spectacle, marking one of the era's most disturbing criminal cases. The court became a theater for Victorian anxieties about domesticity, femininity, and the undetectable nature of poison. As the prosecution laid bare the evidence, the story unfolded like a macabre drama, exposing the unsettling depths of Mary Ann's deeds. Witness after witness took the stand, offering accounts that painted a complex picture of Mary Ann's life. Neighbors described a woman who was outwardly diligent and socially conventional, but occasionally exhibited coldness, especially during times of family illness and death. Testimonies revealed that Mary Ann had been unusually insistent on managing the care of the sick and preparing the meals and medicines they consummate a silent and deadly control leveraged as the means to carry out her crimes. Medical experts testified about the forensic evidence obtained from the exhumations. The increasing prevalence of Marsh's test, a chemical procedure for detecting arsenic, had given the prosecution a powerful tool to confirm poisoning. Analysis showed extraordinarily high levels of arsenic in the bodies of multiple victims, a pattern impossible to attribute to chance or natural disease. Mary Ann's defense attempted to challenge the scientific findings and questioned the reliability of witness testimonies. They portrayed her as a grieving woman overwhelmed by tragedy, denying any malicious intent. However, the weight of forensic evidence and the suspicious concentration of deaths in her immediate circle proved insurmountable. Throughout the trial, Mary Ann maintained a stoic demeanor, neither fully admitting guilt nor expressing overt remorse. Her silence was unsettling, amplifying courtroom tension. The public, both present and through media accounts, struggled to reconcile the image of a seemingly ordinary woman with that of a cold-blooded killer. Further revelations during the proceedings unveiled Mary Ann's financial motives. It emerged that insurance policies and inheritances were secured or expected after some of the victims' deaths. This introduced a chilling calculation to her actions, a murderous pursuit of economic gain under the guise of familial affection. The trial also examined Mary Ann's psychological state. Although 19th century psychiatry was primitive, questions arose about her possible mental health issues, whether she was driven by compulsions or a detached cruelty. The defense invoked these ideas to mitigate culpability, but they failed to sway the jury sufficiently. As evidence piled up and cross-examinations intensified, the courtroom became a crucible for Victorian justice, confronting a uniquely disturbing crime. The case highlighted the limits and emerging capabilities of forensic science, the societal discomfort with female criminality, and the brutality concealed beneath polite surfaces. With closing arguments made and the jury retired, the fate of Mary Ann Britland hung in the balance. Would the court deliver justice in this harrowing case? A verdict would not only decide her life, but also send ripples through a society grappling with an unsettling new understanding of domestic evil. The courtroom drama of Mary Ann Britland's trial culminates here, but the conclusion of her story and the ramifications of the case remain to be told. What blow would the jury deliver? Stay with us as the dark final chapter unfolds and reveals the true cost of Mary Ann's deadly secrets. The jury's verdict in the trial of Mary Ann Britland delivered an unmistakable shockwave across Victorian England. After deliberations that gripped the public's attention, the court found Mary Ann guilty of multiple counts of murder, a verdict that was as definitive as it was terrifying. The revelation that a beloved wife and mother could harbor such deadly intent was beyond the realm of many contemporaries' understanding, leaving communities shaken. Sentencing followed swiftly. Mary Ann was condemned to death by hanging, reflecting the stern values and unforgiving justice of the period. Capital punishment was a common penalty for murder, meant both as retribution and a deterrent. However, executions, especially those involving women, were often fraught with public tension and debate about morality and the social order. The penitentiary system prepared Mary Ann for her grim fate, and in the months preceding her execution, she became a figure of intense public scrutiny and morbid fascination. Newspapers documented her demeanor, reported on her behavior, and speculated about her state of mind. Some accounts depicted her as resolute, others as resigned or even unrepentant. Mary Ann's case fed into broader Victorian fears about the hidden dangers lurking within seemingly normal domestic life. The poisoner's story became a cautionary tale, warning households to be vigilant and highlighting the advances in medical science that exposed previously invisible crimes. The public discourse also touched on women's roles and the social constraints that might drive someone to desperate measures. The execution itself was carried out in a grim ceremony typical of the time, intended both as a public spectacle and an act of solemn justice. Mary Ann's final moments were recorded in minute detail by witnesses, underscoring the somber finality of her sentence. The event closed a tragic and disturbing chapter, but left lingering questions about how such evil could manifest behind closed doors. But beyond the sentence and the execution, Mary Ann Britland's case invited reflection on the societal structures that enabled her crimes. Financial desperation, social isolation, and gender expectations all played roles in shaping her path. The tragedy of lives lost in trust, betrayed, highlighted the dangerous intersection of personal ambition and moral decay. At this stage in the story, the grim truth of Mary Ann's crimes has been fully unveiled and justice appears served. Yet, the echoes of her dark deeds reverberated far beyond the courtroom, influencing perceptions of crime and punishment during an era of change. What legacy did Mary Ann's infamy leave for those who came after? How did her actions influence laws and social awareness? If this haunting tale of greed, poison, and deception has captured your attention, don't forget to subscribe to explore more chilling stories that history almost forgot. What do you think about Mary Ann's fate, justice, mercy, or something more complex? Share your thoughts as we prepare to explore the lasting impact of her crimes and the uneasy legacy she left behind. The aftermath of Mary Ann Britland's execution revealed a profound and multifaceted legacy that rippled through Victorian society and into the broader history of crime and justice. Her case became a grim milestone, highlighting the deadly potential of poison and forever changing how communities and authorities approach suspicious deaths, especially in the domestic sphere. Medical professionals and legal authorities took heed of the forensic breakthroughs exposed by the case. The use of Marsh's test and other chemical diagnostic tools became standard practice, improving the detection of arsenic and other poisons. Mary Ann's crimes exemplified the need for vigilance and enhanced medical scrutiny, influencing protocols across England and beyond. Victorian society, deeply invested in ideals of family and feminine virtue, faced a reckoning. Mary Ann Britland shattered the myth that women were inherently nurturing and incapable of calculated violence. This case, among others, forced a grudging acknowledgement that evil could lurk behind any domestic door, challenging contemporary gender stereotypes and assumptions. The public fascination with poisoners grew, weaving Mary Ann's story into a macabre folklore of Victorian crime. Authors, playwrights, and journalists found in her tale a source of endless inspiration, cautioning against blind trust and illustrating the dark extremes of human nature. Her name became synonymous with betrayal, cold ambition, and the deadly wielding of knowledge about chemistry. Legal reforms slowly followed in tandem with public awareness. The increased difficulty in detecting and proving poisoning crimes prompted lawmakers and police to invest in scientific investigation and training. Mary Ann's trial underscored the necessity of forensic expertise and cooperation between medical examiners and law enforcement, paving the way for modern criminal investigation. Yet beyond the legal and social realm, there was the deeper human toll. The lives cut short, the families shattered, and the community trust torn apart remained vivid reminders of the personal cost of Mary Ann's actions. For many, the cold execution of justice could not heal the wounds inflicted by such a betrayal of kinship and humanity. In the final analysis, Mary Ann Britland's story stands as a dark reflection of Victorian England's struggle with the realities beneath its polished surface greed, deceit, and violence cloaked in the guise of respectability. It compels us to consider the complexities of crime, the fragile boundaries of trust, and the relentless quest for justice. Her case endures as a haunting historical lesson, a cautionary tale embedded in true crime lore and the annals of forensic science. The creepy and horrifying actions of Mary Ann Britland exemplify how the past's darkest secrets still captivate and caution the modern mind. As we close this chapter, remember the twisted path that brought a Victorian housewife to infamy and the shadows she cast over those she betrayed. Thank you for journeying through this chilling story with us. For more unsolved mysteries, historical true crime sagas, and explorations of eerie past crimes, make sure to subscribe and keep the conversation alive below. How do you reconcile the face of innocence with the hand of murder? The history of Ann Britland dares you to ponder.